4 months into my ministerial internship, I tore my meniscus in my right knee playing indoor soccer. And the doctor suggested that rather than just repair the cut, which means they just cut that little cut off, he wanted to repair it, which meant they sew it together. And because there's such little blood flow in that area of the knee, and it's this tissue that doesn't really have much blood flow, it takes 3 months, which means you're not allowed to walk or put weight on that leg for 3 months. Didn't really occur to me what that means until I was already into crutch time. Now, I had to wear a brace for 3 months. It went from my inseam down to my ankle, and I couldn't drive for over a month, and I had to use crutches to get around. And if you've ever used crutches for any period of time, you know how necessary and horrific they are. Every other step, you have to put all of your body's weight onto your hands. These puppies are not made to carry my body weight every other step. So needless to say, I was exhausted just getting from one room to the next. By the time I got there, I was like, whew, that was quite an ordeal what I just accomplished today. And so all of this meant that I needed a lot of help. And the church membership showed up for me in unbelievable ways. People took me to the surgery appointment. They took me home afterwards. They helped me get prescriptions. They brought me meals, and not just any meal. There was a guy who was a food critic with the local paper who made me homemade Middle Eastern food. And it was awesome. And as he described the food that he made if you know me, you know I love food. So as he described the food that he had made for me, I was on serious pain meds. I just started crying. I was so excited and touched by what he did that he quickly made me a plate and left it, and he went home. So as an aspiring minister at the time, I paid attention to what is it like to receive strangers into my home, people I barely knew, to receive the food that they made for me, to trust it, and to eat whatever it was they had brought me and placed in my freezer. I paid attention to what it was like to lose self-sufficiency and to have to ask someone to please pick up a stool for me so that I could put it in my kitchen so I could sit there while the food was reheating. I also paid attention to the wave of help that receded in time, in a time frame that was much shorter than my actual recovery required. Unlike the reading, the wave of help did not follow me for the 3 months of care that I actually needed. I noticed that people got weary of me not being able to make evening meetings, not being able to carry my usual workload. I needed help for a long time, and people aren't always available to help for a long time, especially if they don't even know that it's needed. And I was grateful that while I hadn't fully known in the beginning how much help I was going to need, people knew instinctively and they just organized it for me. And I think in part that happened because I was a very obvious person in the church. I was the ministerial intern. And my supervising minister asked the internship coordinating team that supported me to help coordinate those efforts. But not everyone in a church gets that kind of attention when they're having challenges. I'm really glad that they organized help without me even asking, because it turns out it's a lot easier to just say yes than it is to specifically ask for help. And I learned this a few weeks later when I had to start asking. Being exhausted and sedentary, I developed a blood clot in my leg. And one of the few acquaintances I had in the church, or had outside of the church, I called him on a Saturday night in a Rochester, New York blizzard, and he took me to the emergency room. And after they found the clot and they treated me, they told me I could go home. It was 4 a.m, and upon discharge, they said, "You'll be just fine. If you have symptoms of a heart attack, just give us a call. We'll send an ambulance." And somehow, these didn't seem like words of hospital discharge to me for a woman who's on crutches and can barely move from one room to the next. So as my friend helped me get home and helped support me walking through the 2 feet of freshly fallen snow up to the walkway and the stairs to my apartment, he said, "So you're all set now?" And I'm thinking, yeah, it's 4 a.m, and I just said, "Yes, thank you." I was anything but all set. I was frightened. Never had felt more vulnerable in my whole life. I was contemplating for the first time in real terms that my own body will at some point fail and I will die. That was terrifying. Call if you have symptoms of a heart attack. How was I supposed to get to the phone to call? I would have to remember to place my cell phone in my brace on my leg and carry it from room to room, because if I got from one end of the apartment to the other and I had forgotten it, do you know how long it would take me to have symptoms of a heart attack and get my way back there? So realizing this the next morning, I decided that being alone right now was not really the best idea. But having only lived there for 4 months, I really didn't know anyone. I had met a few women outside of the church in a spiritual practice group that I was a part of, and I knew their names and I had their phone numbers, but I'd never been inside their homes before. But I was preparing to call to ask them if I could come stay in their homes with them for a couple of days each. And the phone, as they say, suddenly became like 200 pounds heavy as I struggled to reach out to some people to get the help I so desperately needed. And when I finally got the courage to do that, when I called and shared my circumstances, they jumped into action without me even having to ask. I can't tell you how relieved I was to be scooped up and cared for by people that I just barely even knew. I am pregnant and I am very emotional. I will tell you, this just thinking about me made me cry at home writing this sermon. I am so moved by generous strangers' love and care. And I'm not one who easily joins group or develops a sense of belonging. You may notice on Sundays where I'm not preaching, you might find me sitting by myself in this sanctuary. It is not the easiest thing for me to initiate new relationships. And I'm a minister in this church. As with the meditation, we offer different selves to people based on our level of trust and our comfort, with our own experiences of trusting other people, of coming to be known, how we choose to reveal ourselves. And so it is also with our willingness to ask for help. How close in do people have to be in your life to be willing to let them know that you're struggling? We may find it easy to ask for help if it's something like borrowing a tool, but some of us won't even do that. We just prefer to go buy it ourselves. And some of us will have no problem calling someone up with whom we've made plans to say, you know what, I really just can't do this tonight. Can we do it next week? And some of us will just show up no matter what because we can't even fathom asking for something like that. For many of us, asking for help or stating our needs is like being in a resistance training class at the spiritual gym. It takes great motivation, courage, or despair to do this kind of workout. And while our muscles seem to develop slowly and only under great weight, those muscles of asking for help, funny how they will just atrophy twice as quickly as they developed if we don't use them. One of the women that I asked for help shared with me that being asked to help, that it was a blessing to her. She said, Erin, I'm unemployed, and all I do right now is write cover letters and get rejected or no response whatsoever. She said, so much of my time is wound up in me and my fears and me trying to calm my fears that someone just asking me to do something simple that I can actually do that makes a difference in your life is a huge gift to me right now. She said, I get to do esteemable acts every time you ask me to do something for you, and I need esteem right now. She said, I'm honored that you let me into your life, that you would count on me as one of the people in your circle that you would turn to when you're feeling so scared. Deb Morey, I love her still. To be clear, that helped that she said that, and it was still hard to call her because I asked for help for 3 months. But I knew I needed to ask, that I couldn't do it on my own. And what I hadn't considered is that while this was necessary and while it also fostered connection, it was also a gift to someone else to simply be asked, to be invited, to be of service. How many of you have asked for help in this church? Raise it hands if you, yeah, a couple of you. How many of you have given to help other people in our church? Like 13 times as many hands just went up. How many of you feel more comfortable asking family or friends for help rather than church folks? Okay, a lot more hands. How many of you can't even imagine asking someone here for help if you needed it? Like that just wouldn't even occur to you. About the same number of hands. Well, then it's okay, that helps, because I had the hardest time trying to find stories this week of people who've received help in this church. I really didn't want to lead with my own story. I thought it'd be more powerful to share your stories of how you gain when you ask for help. But seriously, no one wanted to answer that question. I reached out to Terry Lambert, who is our caring ministry coordinator, and she asked a variety of people who've received services. She also reached out to people who've offered those services, and the one person she called and said, "Will you please talk to Erin?" after I left a desperate voicemail for Terry, said that I could call her. So is that a Midwestern thing? You think? We don't like asking for help, and we also don't like telling people when we've asked for help. We somehow forget completely that even happened. Well, I wasn't sure if the resistance I met in just trying to research this sermon topic might indicate that actually might be a cultural norm in this community. That the resistance I experience might also be the resistance you feel to sharing with someone what might be going on in your life and what kind of support or comfort you might need. The one woman that I did speak to shared her story with me, and she reached out to the church when her home wasn't safe. She was fairly new to Des Moines, pretty isolated, separated from family and friends, and she didn't even know what kind of help she needed. But she called, and she said that all she had to do was just share what was going on, and people offered the help they thought they could. And she said that was amazing. I had no idea what it was that I was asking for or what I needed or how much I could ask for or how much I could rely on these people. But all I had to do was just start to tell the littlest bit of my story, and people showed up for me. They had their own ideas. I don't know if you caught that. You don't even have to say, "I need help." You just share what's going on. You know how to share what's going on, right? So you don't even have to think about asking for help. In some situations, this is true, and at other times, it may not be enough. We may take the risk to tell someone who's not in our inner circle. We may tell someone at church what's going on in our lives, and they may not realize that that's an invitation into deeper connection with them and to be of service or support. Sometimes we have to actually say the words that I'm going to have a hard time eating after my surgery. I wonder if you could help me. A woman in our church told me about her experience with such a circumstance this past winter. She told me and others beforehand what was going on in her life, and I didn't realize that was an invitation to come into her inner circle. Remember that in the new member ceremony when I said you'll be disappointed or angry or frustrated? Well, she was. You know what else she did? She told me. When I sent her a card and I called her and reached out, she said, "You're the only one who did this. I was surprised that there wasn't more show of love in this church or support or just how are you?" And that broke my heart. But I'm so grateful that she told me. Because we can't find ways to strengthen this workshop of common endeavor if we don't share our experiences, no matter what kind of experiences they are. So when we share what's going on in our lives, we never know how people will respond. And there may be people in the church at group that don't recognize the invitation, or it could be your spouse of 15 years. Can I get an amen? Oh, right? Apparently, people still can't read minds. Not even my husband. Sometimes we have to come right out and say the words, asking for support or comfort when we need it. But I have to laugh, even though I knew I would be writing about this. Last Sunday, I came home from church so wiped out, so pregnant and tired and hungry, that I just laid on the couch with tears in my eyes saying, "I'm hungry." And my husband didn't take the bait, and finally he said, "Are you waiting for me to offer to make you lunch?" And I was like, It can be so hard, can't it? To just ask for simple things, especially if it's someone you ask over and over and over again. And yet, isn't it a way that we invite people to love us? One of my husband's love languages is giving and service. So for him, it's like I'm giving him a treat. Why is it still so hard? It is hard for me. It is hard for me to receive love. Can I get an amen? Yeah, right? What is up with being human? I don't know. It's so hard just to be a human sometimes. Well, we have a caring ministry here in this church to help us be human. Terry Lambert coordinates it. And when she hears that people are facing challenges, she reaches out to them to ask, what support do you need? And sometimes people say nothing. And sometimes she'll offer, we could help with some rides, we could help with some meals. What would you like? Someone could come visit, and guess what? Sometimes people just politely refuse. I want to encourage you to say, all right, let me practice the spiritual gift, this spiritual art of receiving love. We need to lean into love more. Isn't that why we come here? We don't come here to just walk past each other and be in services. I hope that that's not enough for you. I hope that this is an alive community, that we really want to resurrect community here in church, that we want to know again the sense of disconnect we can have in our neighborhoods or in our workplaces or in our schools, that it's not satisfying to just merely live next to one another, that we want to be connected. And that only happens if we lean into it. And it doesn't mean you just get to be the person who raises your hand that you're willing to give. Give someone the gift of letting them give to you. Kate Allen asked me if she could host a baby shower for me. And Mark said before he left on his sabbatical, you got to let them love you. You got to do it. And I'm like, oh God, all these people showing up to give me things or blessings or just celebrate with me. And I had a hard time asking the staff to come to another shower. And, I'm somehow burdening the staff by inviting them to join in my celebratory moment. So I need your help. I come here for positive peer pressure. And I need your help. Join me in welcoming people to celebrate and to mourn with us. That we don't do this alone. So while I had no luck, really, in finding people willing to share times when they asked for help, other than the one woman we called and tracked down, I was able to call a few people who are part of the giving side of our ministry, and they had no problem sharing the gifts of being of service. And here's what Pat Peterson had to say. I asked her, how did you get started with organizing receptions after memorial services here in our church? And so she told me, as some of you will know, her husband Pete is a retired Unitarian Universalist minister, and he served this congregation, in fact, at one point. And he was set to officiate a memorial here while Mark was away. And so Pete asked the women of Unity Circle, will you help offer this reception? And Pat was involved with Unity Circle, and someone invited her to help, and she said yes. She said, I never intended to do that. I sort of backed into it. I barely had to ask her any questions, and here's what she had to share about why she stayed involved ever since. She said, it's a very special thing to do. What I've come to understand is that it's really an honor to be asked to participate and help a family with a memorial. When they're going through loss and trying to make sense of what happened to them or their loved one, it's the smallest thing we can do, but it takes it off the mind of the family. They don't have to do that. It's a loving thing that we can do, and I like doing it. She said, as much as I know I need to find new people and transition off of organizing these receptions, she said, it's been a blessing to me too. You find out a lot about yourself when you're doing this, about living and dying. We talk about our own memorial services and what we would like, what we wouldn't like. And when we're talking about caring ministry, Pat said, it's give and get. When you give something, you get so much more than you give. This particular area is real sensitive, and we have a chance to give to each other even when we didn't think we could. It's a quiet ministry. It's a blessing. So you're not hurting someone when you say yes, okay? Okay, Erin? We're giving people a gift. There's so much in life that we can't fix or take away or relieve for people. But when we show up with love, man, doesn't that help? Isn't that the God at our doorstep with the brownies? Just that spirit of love that nourishes what can be nourished in the moment when life is just unfolding as it is. Well, if this speaks to you, there are people in the foyer this morning. If you would like to be one of the people who offers meals or rides or comfort, sign up. Let the caring ministry know that you would like to lean into the love of this community and be part of it. And if you're someone who has needs that you haven't been willing to share and that you only turn to family or friends, think of us as your family and friends. That this is a way we actually weave ourselves together, that we can co-create a community that is alive and vibrant, that will preach its own message. We strengthen this community when we give to it and also when we receive within it. Kate Braestrup was right, that when we show up for one another, we are the good news. We don't come here to stand on our own. Let's equip one another to love more widely and more fully. It is through giving and receiving that we bless one another. May we ever deepen our courage to lean into love. Amen. 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 Yeah, let's sing.